So we are inside 10 days, folks, from the United Auto Workers deadline, past which they are set to strike. So the United Auto Workers, under the leadership of Shawn Fain, are announcing that they are prepared to strike on September 14th if a deal cannot be brokered between their union and the big three automakers. Now, Joe Biden went on a campaign trip to Philadelphia, and he said before a speech, there's apparently no video that's been released to the public of him saying this, but this got some press. This is from Reuters. U.S. President Joe Biden said on Monday that he did not think workers at the nation's three large automakers were likely to go on strike, despite a looming contract deadline later this month. The key quote, "I'm not worried about a strike," the Democratic president said on Monday as he arrived in Philadelphia ahead of a speech for the U.S. Labor Day holiday. "I don't think it's going to happen." And, of course, the take last month, the UAW said its members voted overwhelmingly in favor of authorizing a strike at the Detroit three automakers if agreement is not reached before the current four-year contract expires on September 14th. Here's DJ Judd, who apparently is from CNN, according to his bio. In a gaggle with reporters in Michigan this Labor Day, UAW President Shawn Fain responds to comments from President Joe Biden earlier saying he doesn't think an auto worker strike is likely, telling reporters, "I'm shocked by that reaction. He must know something that we don't know." And here you can see the full quote that he puts on his tweet there. He must know something we don't know, but maybe the company is planning on walking in and giving us our demands on the night before. I don't know, but he's on the inside on something I don't know about, because where we stand, I want to be clear about this, that's not our intent. Our intent is not to strike. Our intent is to get a fair agreement, and that's been our intent from day one. But, as we get down to the wire here, there's three companies to bargain with, and there's 10 days left to do it. So I know what it looks like to me. He's saying, no, it's looking like we absolutely are going to strike and prove Joe Biden wrong. Shawn Fain was also asked on CNN after this why the UAW has not endorsed Joe Biden yet, and do they have any plans to do that? So here's a clip on CNN with UAW President Shawn Fain.
Is an endorsement from your union contingent upon a deal with the White House on these specific demands that you have related to his Inflation Reduction Act, and that is subsidies for electric vehicles? You would like some contingencies based upon that for guarantees for employees too?
Well, it's back to the same old story. When the corporations come to the government with their hand out, the government always delivers billions and billions of dollars. But when the working class people show up and say, we want our share, we want our equitable share, there's always a reason why it can't happen. When it comes to endorsements, our endorsements are going to be earned. And so, actions speak louder than words. So, we will make endorsements when the time is right. And we feel like, the candidates have shown and have delivered for our members' needs and for the working class needs.
So there's his answer, pretty blunt and pretty clear vis-a-vis the question of endorsement, which is significant because 19 other major labor unions have already endorsed Joe Biden. They did so months ago. The UAW is probably the most notable large holdout. But he also talked a little bit there about the Inflation Reduction Act and the transition to electronic vehicles. And this is a point where they've been, frankly, smeared by a lot of outlets as being anti-EV, right? These unions are being anti-EV by basically calling for a just transition. So what they've talked about when it comes to the transition to electronic vehicles, the union is demanding that battery plants, because they're going to have to start making batteries, and a lot of the battery plants for the EVs are owned by the battery makers, not by the automakers. And so the union wants to make sure that those plants where they're making batteries for the EVs are held to the same safety and wage standards as the big three automaker plants. Also, the UAW is concerned that the EV transition will become a sort of race to the bottom as there's this new push now to make electronic vehicles a lot cheaper so that more people can buy them. And so the UAW wants to make sure that there aren't going to be plant closures in association with that, because now EVs are more expensive to make. And so they're worried about things like outsourcing and things like that, because when you hear leaders talk about, well, we want to be able to sell electronic vehicles for 25 grand, when now the average EV goes for 53 grand, the workers hear that and they think, oh, well, we're about to get shafted. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Don't forget, we're talking about the Midwest here. We're talking about Michigan. These are the same people who Bill Clinton told you, no, don't worry, NAFTA is going to work out great for you. You know, it's a new future that we're all ushering in together. We're building a bridge to the 21st century. That's what he said. And don't worry, things are going to work out great for you. Right? They heard that. That memory is still very fresh in the minds of a lot of Rust Belt workers. And so, of course, they're going to have concerns that they don't get shafted in the transition to electronic vehicles. That doesn't mean they're anti-electronic vehicle. It means they're looking out for number one, as every union has to. They have no choice but to. So that's one side of it. On the other side of it, this question of, well, you'll get our endorsement when you've earned it. That's the end. Hey, maybe AOC should learn from that. Maybe the squad should take a page from his book, right? That's the kind of answer you need to give there. Very blunt, right? Very focused. Just, hey, listen, endorsements are earned. They are not gifted.
Well, no. When she sells them out, she's going to say it was at their request, right?
Yeah, right. Is that their
No,
request?
that's what
Right.
they told me to do. Yeah, why would they be skeptical that they're going to get shafted on the EV transition? You know, a former friend of show. He was a friend of show until you screamed at him about nuking
I
the
think he's
country. Thomas Frank. So you threatened to go full Joker on the nation.
Hey, you can
know,
invite him back on and say it'll just be you two.
I'll be like, listen, Keaton, he's got a family obligation. It'll just be us. I'm just going to invite my friend Nick Cruz on. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
right, exactly. Yeah.
No, they've interviewed him actually, Nick and CJ.
I think they said they did, yeah.
Yeah, they did. No, I saw that. It was a good interview. You know, Thomas Frank talks about this, and there's a great video if you want to look it up online. I use this as one of my main audio-visual tools to explain to libs the reality of class politics in America and why the MAGA movement started. I believe it was an interview he did with a French magazine. It's just like a 10-minute thing. Why Hillary Clinton lost the election. If you Google like why Hillary Clinton lost the election, Thomas Frank, you'll get this video. It's only about 10 minutes. And he says in it, these workers in the Rust Belt absolutely hate Bill Clinton because he's responsible for NAFTA. And every time the unions are in negotiations with management, and based on what he says in the interview, we have numbers on this. It's about 90% of the time they bring up NAFTA. About 90%.
Well, of course,
of the time.
yeah.
And, you know, his
How could they
overall
not?
point was Hillary Clinton's last name was Clinton, so she could never get out of it, right? She could never get out of the connection to NAFTA. But yeah, I mean, that's the great betrayal for particularly, obviously, auto workers. So yeah, I mean, of course, they think once they go over to EVs, they'll use it as an excuse to finally get rid of one of the last unions that has not been destroyed by the post-Reagan destruction of the unions. I mean, they've been impacted along with the auto industry because of NAFTA, but they still remain a functioning, powerful union, as demonstrated by the Sturm und Drang and angst surrounding this threat of a strike. So, you know, Biden's going to Biden. But I think it demonstrates how long Democrats have been able to take labor for granted, that he would say something like that and not even think of it as provocative.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think they'll strike because they're so used to having the leadership in their pocket. That's
Right.
why you see all of these unions endorsing politicians that the rank and file union members absolutely fucking hate. Yeah, 97% voted to endorse a strike. What does that tell you, moron?
Right.
What does that tell you about them? Oh no, yeah, strike's very unlikely. They're not behind them, right?
Well, that's why Shawn Fain was saying, unless he knows something I don't, right? Unless he knows of some terms that they're going to make us agree to, because this isn't like the Railway Labor Act. There is no law that Joe Biden can just, call upon to squash it at the last minute, right? The railroad strike was unique because the Railway Labor Act allowed the government the option to step in and regulate contracts because it involved, transportation, critical, interstate transportation. There was a main sort of infrastructure piece. We're talking about a contract between the UAW and the big three automakers, so they're not going to be able to just step in and squash that by order the way they would. And so, yeah, unless you know something that we don't, unless you know some deal that's being brokered, why would you say no? They're not going to strike. Every message that this guy has sent has been like, no, we are going to strike unless they give us what we want. He's been very, very clear on that. I mean, there's been no mystery in his language from the beginning. And it's not just Biden, but, all the mainstream outlets you see, Political will do a write-up on this. While the likelihood of a strike remains low, right? According to who?
According to who? Well, because that's what they're used to. That's
right.
what we're used to. It's been literally like 2 generations since you had a labor movement with teeth.
Right.
Right. I mean, you don't even have anyone reporting today who's reported on a vibrant labor movement that would strike.
Right. Exactly.
They can't even wrap their heads around.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that. The reporters wouldn't even know what a militant labor movement would look like if they went to report on one.
Right. They're just going to the default. Yeah, in the end, there won't be a strike, especially that only got reinforced by the rail union. Anyone who looks at the media critically can tell you, these people are not the sharpest fucking knives in the drawer, right? Like yes, there's no law that Biden can invoke, but they don't think that deeply. Right. They're just used to living in a world where strikes don't happen.
Right, exactly. It would just be so out of the ordinary. Robert Penner says electric vehicles, not electronic. What did I say? Electronic? Yeah, they're making toy cars. That's what they're doing. They're making a little remote control. That's what they're worried about. In the transition to making toy cars, they're going to get screwed because the toy cars are cheap. Did I miss?
Good
catch. Thank you.
They're not covered for manufacturing toys.
Right, exactly.
Please clap.